welcome to Suffragette City Radio Extra. I'm Sobering Maid.
And I'm DJ Lippy.
So, what are we talking about today in our extra bonus content?
Well, it appears that we have got ourselves a nemesis.
A nemesis?
A nemesi?
You know, I have literally always wanted an arch nemesis. I think I quite like the drama and the theatre of it.
Make More Noise has an arch nemesis. They are called Sisters Uncut Manchester.
Okay.
What do you know about Sisters Uncut?
I know a few things about Sisters Uncut. I know that they started as an anti-austerity campaigning group. I think they're called Uncut because of all the cuts to public services.
Oh, okay, makes sense.
That is all that I know about them, really. They have come across my radar recently for other things, but I think they started a few years ago.
Yeah, I think they started out as like a domestic violence, challenging domestic violence, and also especially looking at the impact on immigrant women because of the way that the immigration law works. It's really hard for them to get justice because, you know, if they report it, they might get deported.
Yeah.
And also I saw them. They do a lot about protesting the deportations, so they go to actual airports and stop them from taking people, illegally taking people out of the country.
Right. Oh, interesting.
So,
and they hate us.
They hate us.
They hate us. Why do they hate us?
Well, I thought in the interests of feminine unity, I would contact them. Mm-hmm. So, as you might know, we've been running a series of articles called "The Elephant in the Room." So we're asking leading groups and feminists and people who we like to tell us what they think is feminism's great taboo. So we're asking for 100 to 200 words, whatever you want to speak about, totally unmediated, unedited, whatever you send us, we're going to publish it.
We've had some hot topics as well, some controversial ones. Yeah,
I mean, everyone's got a different elephant. It's
great. It's sparked off so much discussion and debate, which is what we're about as well. We obviously have our manifesto and there are views, but we're not very totalitarian about it. We want to talk, we want to discuss.
Yes. And so I messaged them, basically saying to be honest, I was upfront with them. I was like, to be honest, look, guys, we don't agree on many things, but you know, I really value all the work that you've done. You know, tackling domestic violence, and you know, we can respect you on that side of things. You know, the patriarchy wants to divide us. Maybe we could bring a bit of unity together. And they responded. They responded with an email, but this is what they did. They did a very public Facebook post. Shall I read it out to you?
Yeah.
Right. Trigger warning: transphobia. Yesterday, we were contacted by a group called Make More Noise Manchester. They wanted us to contribute to a piece writing an article for their website, apparently in the name of feminist unity. One look at their website tells you that they are an aggressively transphobic group who publish extremely divisive content. They recently invited Posey Parker to speak at their event, who has repeatedly used the BS excuse of free speech, commas, to spout right-wing ideology on the internet. We will not be working with them, and we hope that you won't either. For transparency, our full response is attached. And they wrote, "Hello, thank you for getting in touch. We won't be contributing to your article, and we won't work with you in any other way. As far as I'm sure you are aware, Sisters Uncut is a specifically safe space for all women, trans, intersex and cis, and all non-binary, agender and gender variant people. Your organisation promotes a transphobic rhetoric which puts our members and our siblings outside the movement and in direct danger. We were appalled to see that you had invited Posey Parker to speak at your event, who, as well as sharing your transphobic ideology, has also repeatedly said homophobic, racist and Islamophobic things in the public sphere. When you invite people like this to our city," actually it's not your city, I bet you're for a student, it's our city, "and the sort of people who want to listen to her, you again put our members and our siblings outside the movement in direct danger. It's disappointing that a part of the feminist movement," brackets, this is quoting us, "a splinter within a splinter, as you describe yourselves, is choosing to court the idea of free speech as a cover-up for right-wing ideology. There's a difference between ideas being unacceptable because they're taboo, or the elephant in the room, and ideas being unacceptable because they cause direct harm to human beings. We hope that you realise this and are able to, in the future, to adopt a more inclusive version of feminism that doesn't cause harm to others. In the meantime, we will work to actively oppose anything that you do in the Greater Manchester area. We will be posting this response on our social media platform to try and discourage other people from working with you. Yours in hope, Sisters Uncut Manchester." I don't know what that sign-off was about.
I mean, it's a bit patronising, isn't it? The kind of hope that we'll
What?
I don't know. Well, because on the one hand, that kind of Yours in Hope feels like that they are hoping that we'll change, but also it feels like they've burned any fucking bridge that they had with that response.
No, and just to do it so publicly, like I didn't respond because I just thought it's just feeling ammunition, isn't it? Well, but then we made this podcast.
Yeah. So yeah, we decided to take to the mic.
We thought we'd take the ball high ground.
So, I'm on the Sisters Uncut website just now, and so they've got a feministo. So who they are, they just says, we are Sisters Uncut. As women and gender variant people who live under the threat of domestic violence, we fight alongside all those who experience domestic, sexual, gendered and state violence in their daily lives. We are fighting for our right to live in safety. We are fighting for our lives. Austerity is a political choice with fatal consequences. Cuts make it harder to leave dangerous situations, live safely and heal from trauma. Safety is a right, not a privilege. Quite like that, yeah. It's all good.
Yeah.
So there's quite a bit on their About Us website. Feel free to check it out. But they've got, I'll just do some of their demands quickly. Provide the funding needed for specialist domestic violence services to meet the needs of all survivors.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Yeah.
A long-term funding plan from central, local and devolved government. Funding must go to specialist organisations. Services must be run for survivors, not for profit.
Yep.
Yeah, agreed. Services must offer flexible, trauma-informed support from the early stages. Yeah, agreed. I'll skip. There's quite a few similar ones. They're all good policies. Poverty, economic insecurity and welfare cuts kill. Like, we know that. Like what they called the disabled, the private disability assessment company. PIP. Yeah. People have died after being, so
it's
agree.
a war on the poor.
Agree. UK immigration system is racist and violent.
Yep, agreed.
Agree. So they're pretty good. Agree with a lot of their feministo. But
what do they actually do, though?
Yeah,
what have they done in Manchester that we know? They're quite new, aren't they?
Yeah. And I mean, I kind of heard of Sisters Uncut, as we mentioned earlier, but they kind of came across my radar in the past 2 years or so because they have been organising lots of counter protests against people who want to debate gender identity or the reforms to the Gender Recognition Act that happened last year, and the consultation closed in October. I don't know if you heard the story of Maria McLaughlin, who got punched.
Yeah. Why did she get punched?
She got punched because she was attending a meeting discussing reforms to the Gender Recognition Act.
Okay.
And this was a counter protest that was organised by, is it WPATH, the World Plan Action for Trans Health or something like that?
WPATH.
Yeah. Sisters Uncut and a couple of other anarchist groups organised a counter protest, and Maria McLaughlin got punched.
It all got a bit out of hand, didn't it? Everything got heated, and then there was people squaring. And basically, I don't know how they identify. I don't know their gender identity, but to me, it looked like there were like four big fuck off guys squaring up to like some middle-aged women.
Yeah. I know that Sisters Uncut also jointly organised a protest outside the Bristol Jam Jar venue where there was another meeting.
Didn't they let off a smoke bomb and try and storm into the room?
Yeah. Protesters did. If it was specifically Sisters Uncut, I don't know, but they were part of the protest and that happened. They also organised a protest in Edinburgh recently. Now, there was a talk called Women's Sex-Based Rights, and lots of very intelligent and informed feminists were speaking there. Professor Rosa Friedman, Julie Bindle, Sister Outrider, she's on Twitter, or Claire Hookin, I think I'm saying that. So, yeah, it's a Scottish surname. Sisters Uncut organised a protest there where there were women talking about, the plight of other women in the sex trade and stuff like that. They didn't even mention trans identity, but hey ho, who cares about those facts? So that's
what happened though. Didn't Julie Bindle get attacked at that?
She did get attacked by somebody who calls themselves Kathy Brennan,
who is actually a human rights lawyer who he's literally stolen her identity, isn't that?
Is Kathy Brennan a human rights lawyer?
Well, she's a lawyer, so
is
he stole her identity basically to fuck her off, to annoy her. Right. She gets really annoyed when people use her name for that person because he's like, that's my name. Yeah. So that's interesting. So
he's a member of Sisters Uncut Edinburgh as well.
So it's interesting that this group, who are set up ostensibly to protest against violence, state violence, and austerity, is literally
attacking women's meetings.
Yeah.
We're not the ones implementing austerity.
Well, and last time I checked, I didn't, I'm not. You know me, guys. I'm not very politically connected.
But then what happened a couple of days after they published that public post about us and our event?
They published another article.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about that article today, aren't we?
Yeah.
You try not to. You got that face on.
I do, yeah. It's just too funny. So then this blog post happened. Where so on the date of our event, there was another protest going on earlier. Mm-hmm. Outside the People's History Museum, because somebody
posted
they've got an exhibition on, haven't they, at the moment?
It's 100 years from Peterloo, or it's in commemoration of Peterloo, so it's all about the history of protest in Manchester. People's protest. And one of they've got like a board so you can put your own messages about whatever you want to protest, what's injustice in 21st century Britain. And a woman had left an adult human, literally on the wall, it's the definition of a woman is adult human female. And the staff took it down and apologised and said, we were unaware that this was hateful stuff. Please be assured that we will never allow this into our museum. And obviously that annoyed a lot of feminists, because they were like, what you're literally saying that women are hateful now. That's where we're at now, isn't it?
I took part of it to be as well, because like the definition, it was that little black card that says woman, adult, human, female, and that was also a protest material in itself. That is that sign, that black placard or whatever, it was on the big billboard in Leeds that got taken down. It's been projected everywhere. It's on t-shirts, like women have been chucked out of bars for wearing those t-shirts. So it is part of the protest as well. So when I took that to mean, when that woman put that on the wall, she wasn't just protesting it, she was also submitting it as materials for what has been a nationwide protest that's ongoing.
No matter what you think about the protests, it is part of history now.
It's a protest. It's been happening. So it's like a submission of archive materials for the museum of what's happening. So there's a protest about that the afternoon of our event, organised by a group called Resistors, Manchester Resistors.
Great Manchester Resistors.
So then Sisters Uncut published this blog post about us, and we would love to read it out to you. Do you want to read? And we've got notes as well. You could read along. We could read along whilst you're listening.
It's one of them, when I don't know what it is on, like when they do like the deconstruction on YouTube, where they like cuss somebody out and they keep stopping it, going like, actually, we're doing that, aren't we?
Yeah.
But we're just going to read it out, aren't we? Like, does that mean, I'm going to try reading it out? You know what I'm like for reading out. So, shall I start?
Go on.
I'll just do the intro. And you can like, we've not figured this out. We're fine. Earlier last month, Sisters Uncut Manchester discovered that a TERF group called Make More Noise, brackets MNN, were organising a private event with notorious bigoted speakers such as Posey Parker in Manchester on the 27th of July. Some members had been aware of extensive TERF networks in Manchester, but thus far they had kept relatively underground. This was to be one of the first, if not the first, attempts by TERFs to create a public presence in Manchester. As such, we decided it was an urgent necessity that we disrupt it. This article is an account of the action we undertook, with the aim of both responding to TERF narratives already proliferating about the day's events, and also to suggest what we and other organisers might learn from these events going forward. By the way, the reason why I keep shouting TERF is because throughout the article it's all in capitals, and that's just what I hear in my head. So that's what I'm doing there.
Right. So this sentence, like, well, from the first sentence, like, it cracked me up. But in the first paragraph, some members have been aware of extensive TERF networks in Manchester, but thus far they had kept relatively underground. Like, I don't know about you, but Manchester's a pretty radical city. Like,
we've not really been that underground, have we?
No, there's been like other huge events.
I mean, if women are keeping underground, do you know what it is? Oh, that weird. What keeps happening to all these women's events? What's the strange thing that keeps on? Oh yeah, it's all the violence and the threats and the bombs.
All the protests. Yeah.
Will you continue?
Okay. So they've written, the first challenge was working out where it was to be held. MMN, Make More Noise, were highly secretive about the location of the event. Whilst trying to find out this location, we became aware that another TERF group, Greater Manchester Resistors, were planning a protest at the People's History Museum in coordination with the evening meeting. The museum was collecting objects from the public for an exhibition commemorating the 200th anniversary of the Peterloo Massacre, entitled Disrupt, 200 Years of Dissent. but had rejected some transphobic material submitted by TERF groups. When we spoke to the People's History Museum, they said that the TERF demonstration did not concern them so long as it wasn't violent. As such, we suspect that their initial refusal to include TERF material was more so as to avoid controversy than out of antagonism to their views. Resistors, however, insisted that in doing this, the People's History Museum were erasing history and silencing women's voices.
Almost immediately, we changed plan. This was to be public transphobic presence in the streets, and therefore urgent that a meeting of people already involved in or approximate to TERF causes the threat of recruitment and the safety of trans people present became a much higher risk. We only found out about the
recruitment. I'm just.
Would you like a leaflet? Fucking right, sorry. Fortunately, most of our plan remained basically the same. The preparation undertaken before the action was basically making signs and banners and going through our safeguarding procedures. Okay, so I want to just make one thing clear here. Safeguarding, they don't think they understand what that means, because safeguarding is a very specific term that refers to the duty of care that like public bodies have to make sure that vulnerable people are safe.
Yeah.
It's not just... they don't know what that word means. I'm sorry. Right. Where are we? They don't know what that word means. It's because they use it throughout. All this could stay the same. The only thing that changed was the location. Though those of us who participated did feel some anxiety, some of us had never been involved in a confrontational demonstration before. This was not as the result of a lack of preparation. That said, as a first action for the newly active group, there were things that we had not considered and that can be improved upon for future events.
I mean, it's just what did they say just earlier, that they were the Great Manchester Resistors were planning a protest in coordination with the evening meeting. I mean, that's not, well, like, we're totally separate. Like, and also, what is it when the Make Monos were highly secretive about the location of the events? Well, yeah, because like there's been bomb threats and stuff, but yeah. Interesting. It just, that threat of recruitment cracked me up though.
We announced our action on social media at around 8 p.m. the day before and posted reminders on the morning too. On the day, the weather was dismal. We met at 1 p.m, an hour before Resistors scheduled the demonstration. A short distance away from the People's History Museum, so we could arrive in a group and assess the situation. When we left the museum at about 20 to 2, we were in a group of 8. Upon arrival, Resistors were nowhere to be seen. This meant that we were able to take up positions in the only area at the entrance of the People's History Museum that was sheltered from the rain. We unfurled our banner, reading, "Transphobia kills women," and waited. Greater Manchester Resistors claim that our decision to stand near the entrance to the People's History Museum was made as a way of positioning ourselves as siding with the People's History Museum. It is false. It was raining heavily all day, and we decided the best option would be to arrive early so we could secure a spot that would provide shelter from the rain. To put that in the safeguarding procedures. Sorry. Sisters Uncut made no previous coordination with the People's History Museum, aside from one member informing the reception staff that the protest and counter-protest would be happening, which they already knew. We were not there to stand in solidarity with the People's History Museum. We were there to show the public that the displays of hatred towards trans people, especially trans women, of course, will not go uncontested in our city. Over the next half an hour or so, more people joined us, with our final number at 27 people in total, a mix of trans, cis, various genders and racially diverse. Most people seemed to be in their 20s, but there were some older and young people present also. So basically it was like loads of dudes there.
Okay, yeah.
So
I mean, I literally wasn't there. All I've done is like read this and seen a couple of videos, but yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the gender identity of them is, but it looks like quite a male heavy presence.
Yeah.
And a lot of shouting and intimidation by males there.
Yeah.
Only 3 of those present were already involved in Sisters Uncut Manchester.
Now that is interesting to me. I thought that was interesting, and that revealed a lot about that action.
Given that aside from Sisters Uncut members, we had only been able to give people 18 hours notice at the most, this turn was impressive, demonstrating not only a pre-existing opposition to TERF ideology in Manchester, but a potential base for further feminist mobilisation in the city. Which, good, if they want to do more stuff, we'll join you. Whilst it is true that people come to one-off protests for different reasons, then they get involved in the long-term organising projects, nor can we ignore the role that this action might play in directing socially diffusive anti-transphobia sentiment into more concrete radical feminist organising.
Yeah. Yeah. Should I carry on?
Yeah, do you want to do a bit now?
It was at some point in this period that Sisters Uncut found out about a free Tommy Robinson protest happening in the Arndale Centre in the city, with about 50 to 100 far-right protesters intimidating local people. Greater Manchester resistors suggested in their account, on their blog, that Sisters Uncut considered the Greater Manchester resistors a greater threat, in quotes, and that, quote, far-right racists would have to wait, end quote. We at Sisters Uncut are anti-fascists and anti-racists, and we want to ensure the safety of all our members and those who protest in solidarity with us. To suggest that a small group made up of mostly women and non-binary people, many of whom were people of colour, face up to a large group of violent racists is ridiculous and also dangerous from an organising perspective.
Yeah, basically you're cowards and you didn't really want to go and fight some actual fascists who might actually hit you, so you thought, oh, there's some middle-aged lesbians over there.
Well, I mean, I really don't mind that they didn't want to go to that Free Tommy Robinson rally. Like, that is a sensible decision.
Well, I don't like counter-protests. I just think it's stirring things up in there.
But, you know, but as you say, to like, and, you know, they're saying we didn't consider them the greater threat, but we still stayed where all the middle-aged lesbians were. And I think it's interesting because they're like, we were mostly young, and it is that kind of, it's that subtle way of saying, yeah, the resistors group, they were all old, and everybody hates old women, don't they? God, old women, old fusty old lesbians.
Smell funny,
they're the worst. And that's what it's saying, really.
And probably voted Brexit and all, didn't they?
Yeah.
Right. Though resistors' arrival was not on schedule.
And they're late. They're old and they're late and they're lesbians.
Women, eh? It seems that they did not send some people to head.
Oh, they did send some people.
Yeah, they did send some people to assess the situation. Alongside the rain, this may explain their delay, since we do not believe they expected a counter demonstration. If our presence there put them off, they did their best to try to hide this when they eventually arrived at 2:45 by attempting to make fun of our chants and to engage us in discussion.
How dare they try and engage in discussion and talk through ideas.
In our safeguarding guidelines, again, that's not what safeguarding is, for the event, we had asked that people not engage with individual antagonisms from TERFs. It had not been specified what to do if they attempted to have conversations with us. If that's in brackets.
That is so telling, though. Like, they have this idea, like, on the one hand, that we're just fusty old, I say we, I mean like people in the gender critical movement are just fusty old lesbians, but on the other hand that we're in like violent antagonistic fusty old lesbians.
Oh no, they said words at me. No,
we didn't expect them to have conversations, we expected antagonism.
As such, some members of the protest had engaged them in this discussion, but all throughout were firm and insistent that this was not a matter for debate. As such, most of them gave up trying to talk to us up close relatively quickly. Whilst in this case, no members of the protest were harmed by this close quarters engagement.
None were harmed by.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to be serious here, but honestly, what do you honestly like? Where? Honestly, you're so mollycoddled that's like somebody trying to politely engage you in conversation is going to harm you. How the?
I know that, and they genuinely thought that. Well, I don't know if they genuinely thought that, but they're writing it in a public post. Like,
do you not have any do you not have any self-awareness? Hang on, sorry.
Yeah.
However,
sorry, I keep interrupting.
Right, no,
it's just so mad.
No, it's funny. However, some trans participants did report that it caused considerable anxiety for them, since the safeguarding guidelines had led them to believe that they wouldn't have to be so close to TERFs themselves. I'm sorry, it's not funny. It is funny. Do you know what you're doing our jobs for us, mate? Hang on. Right.
As such, we should prepare clearer guidelines for future actions.
Oh, them safeguarding guidelines.
It's just we led them to believe they wouldn't have to be so close to the TERFs.
Oh, they've got girl germs.
This is it. I just like it's just boggling my mind that they genuinely like they don't want. And I want to point out that like this is really cult-like behaviour. And I know we throw around that word so much that it's losing a bit of meaning. But in this specific instance, this idea of not engaging with anything that questions the doctrine is literally what cults do.
Yeah.
Like, I read lots of other stuff. I read about flat earth and I didn't believe in flat eartherism. I've read a lot of like this gender identity stuff. I used to believe in it and now I don't, and I still read it to kind of see what their arguments are. And this idea that you cannot engage in with any other kind of political ideas, that's what they do in cults to stop you going outside the cult. And earlier when it said threat of recruitment, like it's like you can't talk to people outside the cult because they might make you leave. They might recruit you to their nefarious cause. It's like, no, we just like want a drink and a chat.
Right. The resistors group had around 10 members. The impression that they did not anticipate a counter-demonstration was reinforced by the fact that they had not prepared any chants, but rather attempted to read out a 5 to 6 page speech.
Now, to be fair, Greater Manchester resistors probs could have maybe thought of like snappier stuff than a 5 to 6 page speech.
Yeah, it's quite...
I feel like that's a fair criticism from Sisters Uncut. I'll give them that.
However, we are unsure of the precise contents of this speech since we were insistently chanting over them, making sure that not a word of it was audible. This is not silencing women, whatever TERFs may insist, since TERFs are not representative of all women. Not only does such a claim already assume that women and trans people are two entirely separate groups without any overlap, but many cis women recognise that TERF ideology requires narrowly circumventing women's role in society, reinforcing the patriarchy. This solidarity between cis women and trans people was dramatically exemplified by the fact that the cis woman present demonstrating in defence of trans rights already outnumbered the TERFs there that day. Precisely because transphobia kills women, including cis women, it is necessary that outspoken transphobes should not be allowed to broadcast their bigotry in public without opposition. As feminists, we know that free speech for marginalised people means opposition to reactionaries and their allies. Right, how can transphobia kill cis women? Do you understand this?
I don't, but it's just occurred to me now as well, they've not defined what Great Manchester resistors were doing was transphobic, like what it was that was transphobic. They've not outlined that.
They didn't hear anything.
They just keep saying,
they wouldn't take a leaflet. They didn't engage in conversations, and they didn't hear any of the speeches. So it's basically just, I don't know.
They've not. Yeah, it's just that really annoys me. Yeah, okay. So they went on our website and like read our stuff and decided that we were, which is untrue. But anyway, like that. At least they said like we went on their website and decided. But they've not laid out what the arguments of Great Manchester resistors are and why they object to them and why they're transphobic. They're just like, they just keep saying that they're transphobic and it's
a circular reasoning, isn't it? GM resistors also claimed that they were wholly non-threatening, whereas they, Sisters Uncut, and those demonstrating with us were not, and suggested that trans rights movement had come from top down from people with a lot of money. When the first small group of 3 people from the GM resistors arrived, we began chanting and shouting and did not interact with them. However, when the larger group of around 8 arrived, they instantly began to go up to members of our group and start hassling them.
Oh, it's changed. Earlier it said like start a conversation and now it's hassling. Okay.
One woman was speaking to a group of our protesters for around 10 minutes.
How dare she?
Repeatedly misgendering people in our group and even at one point calling them fascists. Okay. Multiple members of GM resistors were directly walking up to one another, to one of our group, and asking her whether she was Lily Madigan while misgendering her, taunting her, and asking why she was covering her face, like a
thug,
like a fascist or thug. Yeah, sorry. All the while, one of their members was filming our group. When we did initiate interaction with the group, it was largely to disrupt their photos with trans flags and using our megaphone to drown out their arguing with members of our group and getting them to leave. Honestly, can you just imagine, like, you're trying to talk to somebody, just somebody coming up with a megaphone shouting at you? Just dickheaded behaviour, innit? Honestly, your mum needs to give you a good slap. I'm sorry. We were in no way threatening. Sounds like it. Sisters Uncut is a grassroots group. Our funding comes largely from donations, and the Manchester branch largely uses what little money we have in running the group. TERF groups, like us, like on our fucking Wix website.
Please give us money.
Patreon, we'll put a link in the description. TERF groups have had the vast support of all sections of the British media, support from all political parties, regardless of political ideology. False.
They all support self-ID.
The only party that doesn't support self-ID?
Go on, who is it?
Communist Party of Great Britain. You've never heard of them?
No.
Never heard of them.
No.
As well as the trade unions. Also false. Which trade unions are supporting self-ID?
Oh, it's all the big ones, isn't it? It's
Unison,
TUC.
Unite, TUC.
Yeah.
To name a few. Also, the claim that the trans lobby is unfounded and harks back to homophobic ideas of a gay lobby that were present during the 1980s when Section 28 came into law in the UK. Okay, the idea that this is a group is totally like trans people, this really oppressed minority. Okay, do you want to know some other organisations who have come out recently in support of self-ID, allowing people to choose whichever sex they wish? Barclays Bank.
Okay.
Tesco.
Okay.
Aviva.
Okay.
GCHQ.
Oh, is that MI6?
Yeah. And Procter & Gamble.
Procter & Gamble, we talked about them, episode 3 in beauty industry. Yeah, they own loads of beauty brands. They profit off women's insecurities.
Yeah, well, what a surprise. Yeah. Great pals you guys have got. Hang on. Right. In a similar manner to paint trans solidarity as a kind of mindless regressiveness, GM resistors described our protest as having many defiant and contemptuous expressions and a kind of exultant victoriousness, while at the same time stating that there were very little joy or sense of togetherness. These two statements directly contradict each other. Snap. Got you there.
It's like English essay, like compare and contrast, isn't it? In conclusion, trans members of our group did feel anxious before the action due to our call out being so short notice, and with the reputation that TERFs have of doxing and intimidating trans people. Also, projection, that does not happen. However, there was a strong sense of support and solidarity among our group of people who had largely just met for the first time, and we are sure this group will only grow stronger as time goes on. At 3:30, we noticed that some of the TERFs were inside talking to the People's History Museum staff. Some scouting revealed that... Just go in. Next to her. Yeah. Hi. Excuse me.
The megaphone, sorry. Don't take that leaflet! Sorry. Right, hang on. Some scouting revealed that they were attempting to persuade the staff to accept their material after all. Some members of our protest went inside and also started conversations with staff, alongside the TERFs, attempting to get the staff to accept some of our placards. The People's History Museum accepted both sets of material. It seems that all submissions are assessed by an internal board. Now, that is diplomatic.
Well, I'm glad actually, but I mean, a real protest happened outside the People's History Museum. The People's History Museum is like a radical history museum. I think that's great. A real protest happened with two counter groups, both passionately behind their political ideas. I think it's right that the People's History Museum took both sets of materials, like this one side, this side, the other. Like, I think that's great. It happened. It's history. It's archive.
Resistors had previously stated that the Roman internal communications that the museum would not accept any material that was hostile to certain groups. We appreciate that the staff were just doing their job and attempting to keep what was a potentially volatile situation under control.
All those lesbians.
And based on previous communications, we did not expect them to favour us over the resistors. That said, we hope that the internal board will recognise that the objective dangers of TERF ideology are not a matter of debate and will make the right call what material to display in the exhibition. Oh, shall we send them this when we finish?
We should. This make the right call about what material to display. Like, pick me, so I want to be on the art wall. You know, it's just ridiculous. And what are the dangers based on the objective dangers of TERF ideology? What, the idea that biology is real?
Women exist.
And that we're oppressed because of our bodies?
It's very threatening if you have a very small penis. Sorry, that's true. Objectively true. So this is funny. By 4, they weren't making fun of us anymore. Okay, I've spoken to them. They fucking were. They were constantly making fun of you because you were just silly. Sorry. They had stood in the rain for over an hour and had barely managed to get an audible word out. Not silencing women. Tired, discouraged and frustrated, not to mention wet, they left. We stayed for 20 minutes or so, just to make sure that they had not hid around the corner.
Ready to come back.
Before retreating inside for a cup of tea and pints in the People's Museum history. Okay. Overall, this action can be called a great success. Our aim was to effectively prevent TERFs from spreading their bigotry and to demonstrate at this crucial first public TERF event in the city that they're organising here will not go unopposed. Both of these objectives were met, and given the last-minute nature of this action and the weather that day, the turnout of support for trans people suggests that this is the basis that there is a basis of support here that can be relied upon in the future also. However, we should not rest easy in our exultant victoriousness. There were a number of safeguarding questions we had not anticipated, and consistent numbers do not prepare us for 1. Future violence from TERFs,
what
and
violence?
2. TERFs calling the police on us. Okay, again, we call the police on people when they attack us.
Yeah.
Duh. Which TERF groups have been known to do in other places. Both of these possibilities would pose significant risks to our members and supporters, many of whom face significant marginalisation and cannot rely on respectability from the public or from the police. Yeah, because lesbians are renowned for the great relationship that they've always had with
the police.
If we are to maintain a necessary level of security at future events, we will not only require clearer guidelines on engagement, but training in de-escalation.
I think that's a good idea.
Yep. We could all do a bit of that.
Yeah.
Active bystander work and a police liaison.
I think those are all really good ideas, actually, just generally for actions.
Yeah, well done, Sisters Uncut. That was a good idea. Other Sisters Uncut groups have had a designated person for police liaison for their actions, and this seems well advised, not as a cooperation with the police. Yeah, fuck you, the police. But simply as a limited measure to ensure that any inevitable police presence can be managed and as best as possible within the group.
I think anti-fracking groups do that. I've been to a couple of anti-fracking protests and they have that, it seems to work to a point for them to have police liaison.
Well, you want somebody there who knows what's going on and can advise.
Yeah.
Further, this concern for safety does not only apply to procedure at actions, but translates to a wider strategy of care and community support that should characterise all of our work as feminists. Whilst this action was a success, this should not be automatically taken to mean that anti-TERF action should become a focus of our attention. Yeah, well, maybe actually do something about all the, battered women out there and the, cuts to public services. For a start, many trans participants in the counter demo reported significant exhaustion following the action, and constant engagement with TERF mobilisation without any other success seems likely to contribute to burnout. The suggestion, I like this bit. This suggestion has been reinforced by communication with Sisters Uncut Edinburgh, who also noted that a focus on anti-TERF work led to a tendency to be purely reactive, simply attempting to respond to TERF mobilisations, drawing any energy away from building positive campaigns and support networks. Basically, all they do is protest.
Feminists and lesbians.
Yeah, well done.
But I think that's a good idea. There's a bit of self-realisation there that they should be focusing on more positive work. Like the anti-poverty manifesto that they were founded on, I think is anti-austerity, not anti-poverty. A manifesto that they were founded on is great. I think that's really good. Stop worrying about us. Worry about
the Tory party.
Yeah.
There's war on the poor. If you haven't noticed, there is a really big problem at the moment. So do something about that, please. This problem does not require a withdrawal from trans struggles as such, but simply a different approach. There is a wide variety of positive trans solidarity work and support for trans people that can be done that does not involve direct confrontation with TERFs. Indeed, such work might even be seen as offensive struggles, in contrast to the purely defensive work of opposing public TERF presences. But the wider support network and mobilisations such positive work will create seem likely to make our direct action against TERFs, when undertaken, more successful, since it will come from a stable base of support. Similarly, it has been noted, but much of this work undertaken by this action happened by the trans members of the group. Well, there's a surprise. If it were to become a pattern, it would create an unfair distribution of labour and risk in an anti-TERF action, as well as being unfair in and of itself, and reflective of a gender division of labour in society that hurts all marginalised people. It would exacerbate the risk of burnout that's already been noted. Honestly, go and stand outside in the rain for an afternoon and you get burnt out. God, you need to get a job, mate. Try being on universal credit for a couple of years. Sorry. But the risk forcing trans people to back away from our organisation. This is my favourite bit. Read between the lines here. As such, in future, we should try to ensure that labour and risk is more fairly distributed, with people less directly affected by an issue, whether this be anti-TERF work or work around racism or migration or domestic violence or whatever, taking direction from those more directly impacted. So to me, I read that as basically we're going to make women do all the work.
Yeah.
That's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you want to do the last bit?
It is our hope that this successful action may not be only a successful action, but also part of a wider feminist mobilisation in Manchester, forging strong connections between trans struggles in the city and wider struggles against domestic, sexual, gendered and state violence, and the power structures, institutions and cultures that facilitate this violence. As we chanted at the protests, Women United will never be defeated. I mean...
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I agree with that.
If you ever need any help getting anything together...
Yeah,
give us a call.
Yeah, let us know. That is, we're not being glib there. Genuinely being serious. But I thought it was interesting. Earlier when he's I'm assuming it's been written by a man actually, but it could have been written by a woman. But when the writer, because it's just signed off as Sisters Uncut Manchester, when they say it was the first TERF event, and it's have you been paying attention? There's been like 3 so-called turf events in the past 18 months in Manchester, like, or 4, you know, even. Then like our aim was to effectively prevent turfs from spreading their bigotry and to demonstrate this crucial first public turf event. Like,
do your research, Sisters Uncut.
Yeah, and also, right, so this is all about make more noise, is it? We've not been mentioned since the first paragraph.
Well, they mention us and then they go away.
Yeah, this is all about Sisters, Resistors, Great Manchester Resistors.
It's nice that they think of us so highly, you know, they're obviously, you know, bit of a free plug for us.
And then they're like, this is like, and they're saying that it wasn't a private event, by the way. Our event was public. We told everyone about it. You could get tickets. It was totally open to the public. But they're saying that we were like private event and they needed to find out where it was, and they didn't, but they heard about this protest. And then like, yes, it was a success. We stopped the turf event. And there was like 8 people or so at the Resistors event. And then like, there was about 130 hours that came after like that evening. So you didn't really stop anything.
I mean, well done for, I don't know what to be honest, I don't know what either of these things achieved. I think it goes to show, like, if you do a protest and then a counter demonstration, like, it feeds into each other.
Yeah.
And you know, we've got it's fueled both sides. So again, it's like a lot of the anti-fascist work. While I think that it's right that we oppose and challenge racists and fascists, I'm not sure the approach of counter demonstrations actually does that. I think it can have a risk of escalating things, which, you know, for us, we're happy with that, but, you know, that final thought.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be mindful about the counter demo and where it is. I'm reminded there was a Tommy Robinson rally or something like in Salford somewhere a couple of months ago, and then there was a counter demonstration done by a bunch of people, and that escalated and got a bit like scary, I think. But it was on like this council estate, and it's like, well, and I'll be honest, like, because I know some of the counter demonstration people were, and they're like a bunch of
boys,
middle class, like 20-odd-year-olds, and if you go to a council estate and tell them that they're all racist and thick,
you're gonna get battered, mate.
Think about it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, have you ever been in town when they've been a Tommy Robinson demonstration?
I've not in the thick of it. I've only ever been peripherally.
I went through there once, and it's horrible. Like there was like loads of police and Antifa, and it was Antifa and the far right. And in the end, it was nothing really, but it sort of died down. And it does make me think, you know, there is literally the rise of the far right and a lot of dangerous stuff happening right now.
And we should oppose it, but
I mean, this stuff like this is splitting the left, and we're not. You know what's happening? Women have to defend the literal definition of a woman legally, which we are entitled to do because we are protected under law as a sex class, not as a whatever feelings class. So, you know, the fact that we have to be doing this shit, I'd much rather be, you know, antagonising Tommy Robinson.
So I'd much rather be campaigning. I mean, we are campaigning for like domestic violence survivors as well, but I'd rather that this kind of defending the legal definition wasn't taking up so much of my bloody time and energy, because how can you then, all the other protections for women stem from that? How can you organise around women as a sex class and battle stuff like domestic violence, cuts to women's services, if you cannot define what legal definition of a woman is? Like, we've had to go right back to the root to try and sort out the other stuff, and I'm sick of it.
Yeah, no, just don't get along.
Yeah.
Is that it? Have we finished?
I think so. I mean, I did actually I wanted to sign off.
How many claps did that article get? Was it popular, do you know, on Medium?
Oh, I don't know actually. How many?
27 claps.
Was that when you last saw?
Yeah, well, no, it is. I just saw it before. Okay. I mean, come on, like, I give everyone I see 50 claps. You couldn't even get one mate to give it 50 claps. I'm sorry, I'm not being petty there.
50 times.
It does make me chuckle.
I saw on their Facebook as well when they posted the bit where they like slagged us off the public post that was about like, we're not going to work with them. They asked us to submit this content for Elephant in the Room, and like they've said we're being harassed on Twitter now.
No, they're not. We're not on Twitter.
We're not on Twitter. Like, they're harassing us on Twitter. I mean,
lying again. Are you lying?
Oh, here we are. Sisters Uncut Manchester commented. So somebody asked, did you get anything back from when Sisters Uncut emailed us this?
Yeah, we didn't respond.
Somebody's asked, did you get anything back? And we haven't responded. And they've said, Sisters Uncut Manchester commented, we haven't received anything yet. However, they have taken to harassing us on Twitter.
We're not on Twitter.
On Twitter. I'd love to be back on Twitter.
No, I mean, it's ruining my life.
So I can aggressively ignore you.
Hi, for the very polite conversation. Excuse me, I have 1 or 2 points I would like to... Yeah.
But yeah, I mean... So we've got an arch nemesis. We're accepting other applications. You know, I think it's good to have variety. Makes you stronger if there's like good arch nemesis out there.
Batman. No, it's not Batman. It's the Joker.
No, Batman's a good one.
Yeah, no, it'd be the Joker. We're the good ones, aren't we?
Are we? I don't know. No, we are. Are we? Oh, God.
Yeah, of course. No. Well, if you...
Maybe that's a thought we sign off with.
So yeah, if you want to support the blog, Donald, Mr. Trump, please send us more money, please. But if you're not, just Patreon, please. We're getting up and running. We're starting to do things, and some stable income is just what we need.
Yeah. If you want to support what we do, if you want to support the other Sisters Uncut stuff, like their anti-austerity and deportation stuff, check out their website.
Yeah, give them a follow.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff going on with other like anti-austerity campaigning as well. If you can find somewhere near you.
And also, like us on wherever you got this, give us a review because it bumps us up in the ratings.
Yeah, it does. And we'll be back for a full episode soon.
Bye.